Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today I think we're going to talk a little bit about 55 plus communities.
That's always a big topic around here.
And a point of confusion sometimes. Well, I'm Terry Pasquarelli with MVP Realty.
I'm Rich Pasquarelli with MVP Realty.
So stay tuned and listen while we talk about 55 plus communities, particularly those that we see here in Southwest Florida. There are a host of communities that have a range from no age definition to 55 plus to senior living communities.
Right.
And so today we're just going to hone in on 55 plus.
Exactly.
Well, stay tuned and let's talk about it. Welcome back. We are going to talk about 55 plus communities, and before we do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel. If this content is helpful to you, please give this video a thumbs up and turn on notifications so that you never miss a new video when we post one to the channel. Okay, so now let's talk about 55 plus communities. Part of it is they are a defined housing product.
Yes, they are.
And that's something that's got a national designation. And then we'll kind of hone in on how they show up in Southwest Florida.
Right. What does it take for a community to be called a 55 plus community? And what is in those 55 plus communities?
Right. So as I understand it, there are really four criteria, two of which are very related to one another. First, that as a community is about to put itself out there to be a 55 plus community, they have to conduct a census. And what they need to determine is that 80% of the units that are occupied, at least one occupant is 55 years or older.
Correct.
That's not ownership, that's
Correct.
occupancy.
That's the occupancy. So if someone wants to buy a home for their parents, they could do that.
Well, that's a really great point. So if we had kids who wanted to buy us a home in a 55 plus community, they could do that
Easily.
As long as in the 80-20 designation, if we needed to be in the 80%, one person would have to be 55 years or older.
Exactly. And you can even have a son or daughter living with you that are 25 years old. As long as at least one person residing there is above 55.
And that's for 80% of the units.
Right.
Now, the other 20% we'll come back to because that's really more at the designation of the developer and the manager or owner of the community.
The home ownership rules and regulations, that's left up to them. That is not part of the government guidelines.
Right. So that was point number one. Start out by conducting a census and identifying that at least 80% of the occupied units have an occupant who is 55 or older as the resident. Now, point number two is that kind of a community, 55 plus, has to put itself out there and call itself a 55 plus community. There will be signage, usually at the entrance to the community, and it will be found in the way the community describes itself, in its formal and its informal documents. That's point number two. Point number three, very related to point number one, is that census has to be redone every 2 years to confirm that occupancy is still meeting that 80-20 kind of split, where at least in 80% of the occupied units in that future time period, they're still maintaining an occupancy by a resident who's 55 or older.
Right.
And then the only other real requirement is not one we'd see if we're going to visit the community, but in the declaration of the community, in the legal filing, again, it would be designated as a 55 plus community.
Right.
And from there, the HOA rules take over about what else happens or doesn't happen in the community, which isn't really that different than any other community that happens to have a homeowner association or condo association.
Absolutely.
Control and management.
They're still going to have, you're going to have communities that are not 55 or older, that have no maintenance, active community. They have lifestyle directors. They have all kinds of amenities, whether it's pickleball or swimming pools and bocce courts. You're going to find those in 55 plus communities, and you're going to find those in almost every single other HOA community in Southwest Florida.
Well, that's a great point. So here are some considerations. We'll maybe take them one by one. If you're thinking about whether a 55 plus community would be a great move for you. You may already be living in Southwest Florida, but be thinking of a change, of a progression. Well, one of them is that most of those communities tout the fact that this is low maintenance living.
Right.
So whether it is how the outside of the buildings are going to be painted or how the landscaping and the lawn care is going to happen, you're really paying some dues to leave that to somebody else.
To leave it to the management of the association.
Right.
And that's not only in 55, that's in all of the homeowners associations.
For the most part, again, what they offer varies, but
Right.
low maintenance in Southwest Florida is a feature we find in many communities. You'll definitely want to ask about the extent of low maintenance if you're considering a 55 plus community. Now, the next thing, as you were talking about, is that these are active communities, and especially the newer ones that are being developed and sold now. There is, like any place else, a range of how active they are and how much activity is going to be available to the residents, often with a lifestyle director, but not always.
Not
so
always.
those are great questions to ask on the way in to see where would I be associating with other residents? Where would people be gathering and for what kinds of activities? What's on the calendar? Is there a permanent or a part-time social or management director who takes care of those activities?
A lot of the larger communities have someone that takes care of all of the coming up with the different activities. The smaller communities may not do that, and the residents would take it upon themselves to plan a Christmas party or plan an outing to a play or something like that.
That makes sense, and a lot of times there are committees for affinity groups, the card-playing groups,
Right.
or the active artistic groups, and
Exactly.
things. People may want to go on field trips, and so again, the extent of that and the management of it depends on how complex or how contained the community is, and,
Right.
and whether there's staff to do it or whether the residents are doing that.
And that's-
Now, along with that, I think you can also then look beyond the home that somebody purchases to say what amenities are delivered then right on site at the community. And these days, a lot of active 55 plus communities, you'd have a hard time telling yourself you're not at a resort.
Right. And when we go into communities, if I brought you into a community, you would not be able to tell me if it was a 55 community or whether it was not. There's pretty much, for the most part, really no difference when you're looking at them.
Well, I do think that as people are considering them, they want to consider what lifestyle activities are interesting to them. Residents may still be working. They may be working remotely these days, which is why a lot of people are really rethinking their choice of house and community.
Right.
And then some people are traveling and or have more leisure time. And so that range of amenities, the caliber of a pool, the social, the fitness,
Right.
some have culinary centers
Right.
and performing arts, big gathering rooms with stages so that they really can bring in musical acts, comedians, almost like mini plays and so forth, as
Sure.
well as use those places for residents to have meetings of their own. I've seen communities that have a kiln for doing pottery and
Right.
special rooms designated for art, or maybe a movie room for
Right.
viewing movies. Many of those things can be found right within the confines of the community. Other communities are going to offer some of that and realize that based on location, it's very easy to get to the rest of those types of lifestyle choices outside the community, but in the greater Southwest Florida area.
Right, based on location and also based on how many people live in that community. If you only have 250 dwellings in the community, you may not find all of those amenities as far as having a kiln and having a restaurant on site. You're probably going to have to go outside of that. But once you start getting into communities that have 7, 8, or 100 or more dwellings in there, then you start to get more amenities because it's spread out among more of the residents that can afford to pay for that.
Right, and keep the cost somewhat reasonable.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the things that is a consideration if someone's thinking about a 55 plus community. What is that balance that they're looking for between amenities available right on site activities available through the community so that your networking and friend network can get involved with you, and what is the cost for that. And so there's always that trade-off of how far you want to go or don't want to go on fees. And many communities are, I think, very good at keeping fees pretty low and offering a very high caliber, high quality lifestyle within the community. So it's something to really look at, but it's a great question to ask.
And it's, you have to understand too that the HOA, it is a homeowners association. So the homeowners, they guide the direction and the cost of the amenities. If they want to have more amenities and they decide, as all the homeowners decide that they want to have a lifestyle director full-time, then they decide to do that. These are not profit centers. If to have a pool and as an amenity, and whether it's a 55 community or whether it's not a 55 community, they take the cost of operating that pool or that amenity and they divide it amongst all of the people that live there. So, and there's not a profit to it. It's part of what it costs to have this amenity.
Makes sense. And so I think that can be a really good conversation that we can help somebody have as they're evaluating communities. And there is a lot of choice, even amongst 55 plus communities. So there's a lot to offer, a lot to think about, but choices, as you said, in any community, there are a lot of choices. The other kind of choice is the type and style of home and the size of home. Sometimes when people talk to us about 55 plus communities, they immediately think downsizing. And I think that's a myth that can be busted, especially with regard to communities that are coming online these days. Some people are looking to maintain the kind of house that they had before. They just want to live in a different neighborhood, different location, and perhaps tap into some of these things we just talked about. But the home sizes range from modest, perhaps condo or twin paired villa homes, to single family homes that could range from modest to large estate luxury homes that really run the gamut.
Over 3,000 square feet
easily.
In a 55 plus community. These are not retirement communities.
Here are folks that are really in the prime of life who are looking for, again, an active lifestyle, a healthy and often outdoor oriented lifestyle in Southwest Florida, but they're balancing that with work, with travel, and so that's a consideration. What I would say is, while the housing products can range from condos or villas to single family homes, often, but not always, there will be a lot of offerings that are single story homes. So one story living is something that people do like. It's a lifestyle choice. A little less running up and down of the stairs, okay. And that is probably a choice that you would see maybe more predominantly in a 55 plus community, but not as an exclusion to other options depending on the builders.
They still may have options with a second story.
Right. And then, as we've talked about, there are really those just 4 basic criteria that help meet the federal designations for 55 plus communities. All of the other ways that a community is managed really start to come up then through the homeowners association. So the HOA itself is a consideration for people to find out about, to read the documents, to get the budget, to get the rules and regulations, and make sure they really know what it's like to live in that community. I think we can't stress enough, we give that same advice to someone who's looking in a non-age restricted community, because the HOA rules could be stricter or very similar in a non-age defined community as they could be in a 55 plus. But you do want to know what the fees are going for. You want to know that there are good reserves so that the amenities and things can be maintained without your fees surprising you or getting special assessments going through the roof. And you want to know your overall expectation around fees from a budget perspective. You're going to budget for your home and for your ongoing lifestyle, which this by definition is going to have an HOA, is going to have some fees associated with maintaining the community. And if someone absolutely doesn't want HOA fees, it might be difficult to find an HOA free 55 plus community here in Southwest Florida.
I don't know of any.
There could be some that are maybe communities that have been established a lot longer. Sometimes there are manufactured homes or even mobile homes, And there are communities of those that are designated for 55 plus living as well, and they are not going to have the kind of amenities
They
and
won't.
organization that we're talking about.
They wouldn't have any amenities, right?
Right, but other than those, most communities that are, especially up and coming now, are communities that are going to feature all of the different things that we talked about that are more lifestyle oriented,
Right.
and that is often what people are asking us about. In terms of who you bump into in the community, again, it runs the gamut.
Sure does.
There can be people who are owners and or residents in the 20% that are adults but under 55.
Right.
That's not unusual at all.
Right.
And then there can be people who are at 55 or above who are still working, who may be big travelers, who like the idea of closing the door and going when they want to go and being back when they're back, and people who are full-time residents in that community. And it's a great opportunity to find people with like-minded interests and activity patterns, and a lot of, again, choice and discretion there in terms of what the community offers and what the residents really want. Well, I think one of the questions that sometimes people ask is, well, does that mean I'm not going to see young people in the community? And as you can imagine, anybody who lives in a community, 55 plus or otherwise, often has family members, and it could be children or grandchildren, who are not yet adults.
Right.
And usually what the stratification is that a community's rules will not allow someone, whether it's under 19 or 20, their rules may vary, but that younger person, teenager and below, cannot be a full-time resident of the community.
Right.
But the amenities are even set up to encourage family members, children, and grandchildren to come and visit.
Absolutely.
And or to stay with whatever the community's rules are about what the length of that stay or the number of those stays can be. So there are grandchildren visiting. Now, whether they're restricted to one visit of a couple of weeks or several months may vary a little bit by
By
community.
the community.
But they're certainly welcome, and the lifestyle that people live involves their family and their friends without undue restriction.
Absolutely. We've seen communities, 55 plus communities, that have playgrounds.
They sure do. Special pools.
Special pools for kids.
Did you say utes? What is a ute?
For
And
visitors.
playgrounds and for visitors. So, absolutely, when, if you decide to buy in a community that happens to be a 55 plus, your kids and grandkids are certainly going to be able to come and visit and enjoy the stay down here in Southwest Florida with you.
Right. But just be thinking about if someone was going to live with you full time, that could be where the cutoff is.
That's the big difference right there.
And there could be, and I think less and less all the time, but there could be pet restrictions. So again, that happens in non-age restrictive as much as 55 plus communities.
Right.
But that's one of those areas within the homeowners association that it's always good to check out before you make a decision to buy.
Right.
Are there any limits on the number, size, or species of pets
Right.
that someone can have in the community?
And it may vary in the community based on whether you live in a condo or a single family home.
Very true. And whether you're the owner or a renter.
That's right.
And that, again, is not so unique to a 55 plus. It's just a really good question always to be checking out.
Absolutely.
Based on being able to keep all your family members with you
Right.
if you move.
That's right.
So I think when we look at this, a lot of the considerations are the absolute location of the community. Is it near other things you need? Maybe you still need proximity to the airport, or you're interested in volunteering, or your access to healthcare, your access to church and other groups and sports that you participate
your
in,
access to work.
and to work. If you don't work from home,
If
you
you
may
don't
be
work from
going
home.
somewhere. Absolutely. And so location is important. Overall structure of the community, including rules, regs, and fees, always a consideration. The style of home, the size and the expense of the home
Right.
that you have is something to look at, and as well as what amenities are available to you in the community, which may mean for some people that with the pools and the other common facilities, they may not take on the expense of putting that pool or some other amenity on their own property.
Exactly.
They can kind of make some choices about what they're already paying for in a fee and tapping into with friends, or what they want to have in their own backyard.
That's right. They may want to, instead of having a pool, they may want to buy a boat.
There you go.
And use the community pool when they want to use a pool.
So I think all of those things are great considerations. Would I call them a pro or a con? Probably not.
No.
I think they're just great considerations when you're thinking about finding the community that meets your needs
Right.
and lets you enjoy your lifestyle wherever you are in life.
Absolutely.
And so if you're interested in 55 plus communities in Southwest Florida, give us a call, message us. Our information's in the contact description below this video. We'd love to chat with you about whether a 55 plus active community in Southwest Florida might be a great next option for you. And if not, we know a number of other communities that might just fit the bill. So don't hesitate, reach out. In the meantime, again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If this content was helpful, give this video a thumbs up and turn on notifications so you'll know every time we post a new video to this channel. So all I'll say is, let's talk soon.
Bye now.